Don't stop talking.
Oh, no,
Let's get the party going.
yeah. The party. So
You seem to be getting into a good rhythm.
yeah, we're just checking in.
Guys,
Good.
thanks
No problem.
so much for being here again. It has been a crazy week, and I'm in solo at the moment, and I don't actually have a charger with me, so let's jump right in and start trying to deconstruct this beast that we have.
That's good.
Following up on the previous week's format, I'd love to hear from Joe first, I guess, the community feeling. I know that we've been getting a lot of feedback for various channels, but from
Yeah.
a participant that also is very technically inclined, we can see like the temperature check where we are at and then deconstruct from the Blaze's brain perspective, because I don't really understand what's going on anymore.
It's been interesting to kind of watch how everything has gone from the early days. I started from day one and now to where we are a few weeks later. And the issues that have been popping up where we've had to change, whether it's a hard fork or config file, that has been a fine process for me. Just again, I think as I said in the last episode, I have like scripts set up. It's just quick. I can go through all that stuff. It's not a big deal. But what I am noticing though is continuing to, I think, separate the community. Maybe it feels very negative from some people, but it's probably really for the better, where some of these more simple tasks where people are getting upset and frustrated by, again, gives you that guideline of, look, this is maybe not for you just yet, because this is serious stuff once you get to mainnet. And so it's starting to separate some of that stuff out. Now, we were talking before the call started, me personally running my validator, it's been a little bit frustrating at times just because I don't always can understand the, like, why sometimes I am missing chunks. It's just one of those things where you feel like you're doing all the right stuff. You're not totally sure what's maybe missing. So it's just, that's a learning process. And that's also probably something that as a whole, with some of the instability of the network, probably that maybe that's adding to it as well, but it's still a learning process for everybody.
By any chance, do you know on the leader scoreboard what your numbers are looking like? Percentage uptime, number of chunks?
I think at last looked, it was like the high 70s, maybe low 80s, somewhere around there.
Interesting. I really do believe that the theme for this week is going to be trying to strike that balance between the competition as I guess like a separate entity, making it fair, making it fun, making it clear, and the reality of we're trying to battle test a major protocol upgrade for a major blockchain that has a lot of money and users. And, you know, the technology comes first. It's been an interesting week trying to find that balance. Maybe what we can do is I can give a really quick overview as I understand it, and then we can start to deconstruct maybe some of the reasoning behind the decisions being made and some of the current challenges that we're facing and how we're thinking of approaching them. But last week, on Monday, we noticed a major issue around a lot of nodes being either just fully offline. We've actually kindly named these zombie pools. We have well over 400 pools that are there, and they're there in the same way that the lamp is standing next to me. No chunks, no blocks, offline, very little uptime. And this really destabilizes the network because of the ratio of total number of pools and how many are online. We're really having trouble keeping the network stable. The block syncing, some of the core features that we're trying to test from the upgrade perspective around the routing, it's just not possible to do it if the network is this unstable. So from that perspective, we have to understand our priority right now is to stabilize the network to enable Pagoda to do the testing so that we can move on to testnet. If we don't reach that stability, we're not going to hit the deadline to move on to testnet. It's no major issue. We can always delay the timelines to be able to test properly. I guess that alludes to the balancing small competitors and training people up into being a validator and the reality of we're after the top 200. And if we have a setup that it's not enabling the network to move forward, we really are in a tough decision to make changes very rapidly to revert back to stability place.
So yeah, I think the challenge is what we're having with the network is we've got two things going on. We've got all these zombie pools. So there's over 1,000 validators now participating, but when you look at the number of validators out there and the number that have been online that have produced a block, we have a number of those that haven't done very much of anything. If those folks enter the validator set, even though they're not doing anything, they're misconfigured, they're on old commit, they're on old hard fork of the network, they still are supposed to be actively participating in that consensus. And so that causes the chain to slow down. It causes people to miss chunks, causes people to miss blocks. So there is a side effect. The second thing that was happening, and now less, but it was taking place, was we had a lot of people accumulating a lot of stake, then taking up a lot of the seats, getting most of the validation. But then again, they weren't online. So it was just causing the network to stall, as we technically call it. So that's part of the challenge we're wading through right now, and really put the uptime competition out there as part of a way to kind of get everybody more aware that you need to be online. We're right now taking community feedback, but we're actively looking at what that next challenge is going to be finalized to be. And we've got a call tomorrow to discuss that, just so we can figure out how we get Shardnet a little bit more stable, so we can make sure we're testing the core functionality of the protocol, and then reward the people that are doing pretty good. If you haven't been active, if you've missed and had a lot of downtime, really at this point, you're not participating in the competition. And we know that only 200 people can win. So this is where the competition kicks into gear. You're going to get left behind if you're not keeping up and making all the strides and making all the moves to stay online.
That is actually something that perhaps would be worth explaining. We see the challenges as like go-to market for changes to be implemented in the network. And we have been framing some things that need to be done for the network to be stable as a challenge. And this perhaps is slightly different from other challenges that may be optional or are more educational, but whether you do it or not, the network will be there. We've tried to create a set of incentives through challenges to reach that network stability. And maybe that's why some of the participants see the challenges as being perhaps unfair or not quite in line with what we've been doing. But I guess that the option would be implementing these changes regardless of it being a challenge. I guess the framing of the changes is what's changing. So if we were to map a little bit the evolution of what we've been doing, the challenge that is published now rewards people for being online, their uptime, with delegated near. So basically, if you perform well on Shardnet, you will be rewarded towards the mainnet seat. We saw some improvements with that. The subsequent challenges that we're working on are actually looking at also delegating Shardnet near or Testnet near doesn't have any value. But what we're trying to do is trying to rebalance the network so that people that are performing well are able to accumulate more near much more rapidly and rise to the top, and push down even pools that may have gamed the faucet and accumulate near, but are now going offline. It's all about getting that 67% consensus to actually be online. Shardnet presents a really unique setup in that most of the near in each node is delegated by them. On mainnet, if you go offline, either users withdraw or liquid staking automatically withdraws. So you could potentially go offline and silently fade away. But if you go offline in Shardnet and you have 13% of the stake, you're really causing us a lot of trouble. So this is some of the reasoning behind the challenges. We've tried to propose some things and there's been a lot of feedback. So who wants to jump in, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has been apparent of some of the, especially the feedback that's been in the announcements. It's really been focused on, looks like, hey, we're trying to keep things stable. I've seen a lot of the announcements about to get away from, don't get caught up in how much near you have delegated. Make sure you're doing these proper steps and going through some of that. I hope that is getting a message across to people. I think there is a group of people who are getting it, but there is definitely, and I also see a lot of, like you might said, that people are complaining as well. And so the people who are complaining about those type of challenges and those issues, again, it makes you wonder where they understand of the importance of what they're trying to do here. It's not just a let me try to win near kind of competition. It's like, no, this is actually for the future of the network. This is larger than just trying to win money.
I'm in Seoul at the moment. There's a chain of events. There was a DSRV Hacker House a few days ago. There's Asia Build now. There's ETH Seoul later this week. Korea Blockchain Week next week. And it's amazing to talk to people from other ecosystems, understand what they're doing technically, because it's hard for us to keep up with everything. And there's always a meeting of the minds somewhere. That's like the crypto ethos. And one thing that has come up several times in different contexts is the network to be able to survive in adversarial conditions. We have to understand that you need to create a system where you can't assume everyone has good intent. You have to assume somebody's going to attack you. That's why when we talk about zombie pools, we must have a mechanism to remove 400 pools. Do we have a way of knowing whether 400 pools are malicious to create instability or whether it's just people that gave up? Like every challenge, every delegation that we do creates a set of incentives. So it's important to look at that broader picture of beyond the competition, what we test now is going to be mainnet. And beyond the competition, it's not just your seat with 50,000 near, it's mainnet with billions of dollars. It's really important to keep that big picture in mind and know that we're not running the competition for fun. There's engineers trying to keep up with what's happening on the code. Is it behaving as intended? Is it stalling? Is it something that we can fix easily, namely the delegation of the validators? Or is it the actual code, like a performance fix that needs to be implemented before it goes to mainnet?
I think it's just circling back on what you guys are saying, a couple of key points that as we just make it clear to everyone on the call or that watches this once again, the amount of stake you have on Shardnet does not mean you win the competition. So going out there and spinning up wallets and trying to get more stake, climb that way, that's not how you're going to be included. That actually will get you disqualified because it goes against the contest rules. So we really don't recommend that people do that. It is about uptime, and some people think, well, if I go grab more stake, I'll get more uptime. But again, we're watching those things, so you'll be disqualified. That's the key here. You'll be disqualified. So we really don't want people going out and doing that. And that's not the intent of the competition. So really, it's making the updates, staying engaged in the chat, and being one of those people that are going to be at the end of the day one of those last 200 standing. And so that's what's great about this. To go back to your point, ABB, on we don't want these things happening on mainnet. As this competition goes on, we're going to see those folks being sorted and shuffled out that are not staying with the program, that are not actively engaged. So at the end of this, we should come away with 200 like we have on previous stake wars that are really engaged and want to be part of this network.
The question is, and maybe I'll put this to Joe, because I love that every time that I ask something, he responds with something way more insightful than I was expecting. Are we there yet? Are we at the point of the competition where it is time to say, this is the minimum performance metrics? And maybe I'll preface that with saying that we are aware of some stability issues on Shardnet, which may be a barrier for people to getting to the ideal performance. But are we at the pace in the competition where we need to start defining, okay, what is the minimum? What is needed to be fixed on the Pagoda side or the code side? And how do we start sifting people out?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I started on day one, being in a competition from then to now. You can definitely start to see people who are definitely serious about it, and maybe they don't have the best performance. And I have seen in some of the Discord chat of people probably feeling the same way I do. Of I've met all the updates, I've done all the things, and I still get blocks and what's going on. And you don't want to dissuade some of those type of people who are serious and do want to be part of this, because they feel like I'm doing everything right and things aren't still going the way I expect. So I think there is a piece of that where there comes a time of saying, okay, enough is enough. We need to start focusing on making sure the people who can do this work have an opportunity to really show that ability and take it to the next step. And if that means now cutting it in the competition in half or by 75% even, then yeah, now's the time. Because even if you're not ready to actually end the competition, maybe you have to be in testnet longer. I think that's okay. People understand this is new technology. You don't want to just keep treading water at this spot.
Maybe I'll do a really quick recap of some of the changes we've implemented up until now, and then Blaze can give us an insight on some of the metrics that we're trying to define to have that cutoff. So, as some of you may recall, if you've seen the previous 2 episodes, as we started facing challenges of people accumulating too much stake, we started making changes to the faucet. So we significantly reduced the amount of near being created. We also improved the communication around there is no need to accumulate near, or at least no benefit for winning the competition. And then we've progressed with more challenges. We've included having rewards for uptime in mainnet. We're starting to look at rewards of near on Shardnet to balance the network. Perhaps the more, well, definitely the most controversial one for now was the proposed challenge to, I guess, start to clear or remove the network. So before I hand over to Blaze to define the actual metrics and how we're reasoning about it, I'll just say that we were contemplating doing Hardfork and just removing the zombie pools, and now we're looking at blacklisting as a mechanism to just get those pools out of circulation, but without the need for a Hardfork. So there's been a lot of moving pieces, and we're a fully decentralized team who are all doing this on top of normal workload. So it's been very interesting to see how it evolves in real time and how each party really adds a depth of meaning or understanding. Some come from the community side, some come from the previous competition side, some come from the needs of the code to be tested right now. Blaze, how are we trying to define who is a zombie pool and how can we start to wind down to a functional network?
So one of the key metrics that we're all aware of, and it makes perfect sense, and I know that some people aren't really satisfied with it. There have been some challenges as we've went through these hard forks and things that have affected uptime. But at the end of the day, it's uptime. Since the moment you showed up on the network, how many epochs have you validated? How many have you missed? How many total epochs have you been around? Those really are the key metrics. So we were trying to say, listen, if you've missed 3 days worth of epochs so far, which is actually quite a few, you would never see that on main. Then we were looking to essentially disqualify a lot of those folks that had missed at that threshold. But we've gotten good feedback from the community that there were some good validators that were going to get disqualified in that. We're trying to give a lot of grace here and define a metric that makes sense. So we may move that up to 25 epochs and maybe have that on a rotating basis. But really, at the end of the day, it's about that percentage of chunks online. We know that on mainnet, that has to be 95%. Now, we're on an experimental network right now where there are additional variables you would have in a mainnet environment. But as you can see, you scroll down the list here, we've got folks with 0%, 3%, 4%. It's quite clear that those folks that are running that low on being online, they either don't have enough stake to their pool. There's an issue with the way they have things configured. They never fully set it up, but they have pings running. So you see all these zeros here. This is what we're calling the zombie pools. They've essentially been around 35 epochs. When you look at the one there, let's pick up an example. The Cadmus had been around 30 epochs, but hasn't really done anything. This is what we've got to work on, getting cleaned up and moving forward the contestants that are putting in the time and have a good uptime. And so that's what we're reviewing and actively checking on right now. We're thinking to be a good contestant, you probably need to be above 50% online at this point, but we're still working through that and are going to finalize some of those details tomorrow on the call.
If the people looking at the screen, I would strongly encourage everyone to go check out the scoreboard and scroll through. But I am aware that once you scroll down, you can't see the titles. So each column, it starts with chunks produced, next to it, chunks expected, next to it, percentage of chunks online, next to it, blocks produced, next to it, blocks expected. And basically, that gives us a really good idea of these nodes aren't really active at all. So looking at the blocks and chunks produced is one metric, although maybe something else that you can touch on, Blaze, is we only really have 400 seats. So if we have 1,000 participants, we understand that there can be nodes that are active and performing well, but they may not be producing chunks or blocks all the time. And then we were looking at the epoch metric because, yeah, being like proper offline, I guess the way that I described it in the call was the epoch would be that overarching layer where if you missed a lot of chunks or blocks, then you get kicked out. So you're not there for the epoch. we now understand, and we have taken the feedback on board that due to the instability of the network, that may be yet another reason why people may not be online. But overall, that's one way to think of the epochs and some of the reasoning behind the changes proposed, or at least the original reasoning. We're still tweaking with it, but
Yeah, I'd like to put a question out to Joe on his pool. He's actively participating here. How many epochs have you missed, and what are you thinking a good threshold would be based on your today of how much uptime you should have at this?
Great question. So I know I missed a few epochs during one of the forks. So I think probably the first fork led to just, I had some configuration issues, my fault, learning experience. And then from there back on. But I do think there is a clear threshold, and I don't know what the exact number maybe is, but if you have missed, probably, I think you start probably at like baseline of 50%. If you've been online for 50% or offline or missed epochs for 50% of the time that you've had your thing up, then that's more than just an issue with the configuration from a hard fork. That's more than just something else. To me, it feels okay. Either you're not asking for help and you're truly stuck and you don't know what to do. And so that should probably disqualify you. Or like you're just not participating at that point. And if you are at 50% or less and you truly feel like shouldn't be disqualified, I guess maybe you could petition to say otherwise, but I don't know what the reason would be at that point. Because that's more than 50% is really, that's a pretty low threshold, regardless of the issues.
I'm aware that for the recording, this screen will be the same size as our face, so it may be too small for people to see. So once again, I'll strongly encourage you to go look at the leaderboard. All the information is there. Joe, from the pool 768 down, doesn't matter how many epochs have been online. These ones have been 32 epochs, 23, 29. It literally doesn't matter. They've missed every single one. Not one block, not one chunk. So, like I said, for participants that may feel like the requirements that we're putting out may be too stringent or may go against them, if they're trying and they are in the Discord, they are most likely not these pools.
Yeah.
Like, these are literally zombie pools. There's just no other way to define them. And some of the more radical changes that we're trying to implement as soon as possible are mostly aimed at these pools. We're also thinking of ways of managing the participant expectation once we're able to bring some stability to the network and remove these zombie pools. There's about 400 of them. And it is worth mentioning that some people that were zombies during our last call, they now all have at least one epoch validated. So maybe some of the challenges that we're putting out have encouraged people to become more active. And we do have to be mindful that people can improve. We're 3 weeks into an 8-week competition. But yeah, I just want to highlight some of the extent of pools that are dramatically inactive. And once we get rid of the zombies, 7, 6, 8 downwards, there is a case to be made of, well, can we try to understand what's happening with these pools? 37 epochs, 36 missed. Is it a network issue, so we have more leeway? Or realistically, is a participant that has been around for 37 epochs and missed 36, do they have a chance of winning? Because once again, we just need the network to be stable. OpenShards Alliance is a validator bootcamp, so we do want to train everyone to be able to run a validator. Stakewars specifically, I feel like we do need to find that way to keep the network running.
If you were not showing the leaderboard and we were at like validator 200 and they were the really low numbers, then you say, sure, like the network, we need to reevaluate what we're doing. But when you have still hundreds of validators still doing okay and not much better percentages in these, then you say, okay, this is a competition and we did want to make it available to as many people as possible. And we're glad that you went through the process and made this. There are clearly hundreds of other validators that are at least closer to being ready. So we need to draw the line somewhere.
To put things into perspective, we wouldn't be implementing these challenges if the network wasn't unstable. Like, that's basically the emergency button. If the validators with the resources available were not able to keep the network stable, then we have to step in to make sure that the competition remains on track. Blaze, I think something that I mentioned before, the 400 seat price and how that may be impacting us with the number of participants that we have. Is it something that you can comment
The
on?
mainnet, they're still saying we'll have between 200 to 400 seats. So it's not 100% ironed down, but obviously we'll want to look probably to the lower tier to begin with. So 200 seats available. So yeah, key is that if you've got 200 seats, stake is below the 200 people that are above you, you're not going to make the validator set. So it really is a race to the top in terms of stake. And I know that's why a lot of these folks, if they go create these bots and get a lot of stake, that'll disqualify you from the competition. So it really won't help you. But it is about staying online for a number of epochs, getting those extra delegation of Shardnet near to remain in the active validator set. That's where we're headed. And that's not going to be the only time is on Shardnet, because when we get to Testnet, it will all be delegated. So we're going to have the same scenario there where you're not going to be able to go out and accumulate all this near. And I can tell you that the seat price on mainnet is so high that it would take them a very long time to create a bot to get enough to actually get onto Testnet. I said mainnet, but I meant Testnet. So it's a very high seat price over there. So it might take a while to get that amount near. Of course, they did it with a bot over here, so maybe they do it again. But in this case, it's going to be all delegated here on Testnet as well. And I don't know how many folks we're going to take over to Testnet. That's something we have to finalize. But yeah, it's not going to be 1,000. So if you are a contestant that missed 49 validators and came online for one, your odds of making that cut are going to be very slim, right? So been online for 5% of the time, your odds are probably very slim. So I know it's upsetting to people, but that's just the reality of the competition.
Joe, I'd love to get your insights because we have very open-ended discussions. We really want to consider all alternatives. And as I said, we always get a different perspective and different things that we propose. Considering the current state of the Shardnet and some of the performance of the validators, some of the things that have been discussed, it's nothing set in stone, it's just ideas, options, would be things such as we move on to phase one, but instead of 200 validators coming out of Stake Wars, we may have a reduced amount. So you basically increase the pool price for less validators. There's also the possibility of bringing in mainnet validators to help us stabilize Shardnet. So we'll be looking at a special configuration there whereby mainnet validators are not eligible for a new validator on the chunk only producers through the competition, but we're still trying to find a way to make it fair and reasonable for them. So ideally we want to get them in to help us stabilize the network, obviously familiarize themselves as well with the chunk only producers code. I think that's something that they should be doing regardless, although I understand that most of them would be coming in on Testnet. And yeah, do you have any thoughts on those kind of configurations, or how, I guess, both the need for them and whether it seems like something that we should be considering more and how it could be perceived from the community? We'll just take you as the one participant that can
Sure.
represent
Uh,
a
speaking
broader set of
Now,
users.
just look, my perspective is somebody who's in the community, and not just as a technical person in this competition, but as a near user, as a near advocate in these different roles. The thing that comes to mind first is, while I hope I can get to be one of those nodes that goes up to mainnet, and I'm gonna keep working my hardest. But if I didn't cut it and I was not contributing positively to the network, I would hope that my node got cut, because my long-term vision and hope for Near is that it is a top of the line network that is stable for many years to come. And that really needs to be the thought process here. It is exciting to have a chance to maybe become a validator where you thought you never had that chance. And I understand that. And I get for some people, this could be a really big windfall for them as well. I empathize with all of that. But again, if you truly are part of the community, the network has to come first. And so you have to take a step back a little bit, not make it about yourself, and understand what it is. And that is probably what about being a validator is. It's not about you. It's about what's going on in the entire network. I like both of those ideas. I don't know, again, how much where the mainnet validators and how they feel and what that incentive is for them to come in. I don't know enough, obviously, about what that really does for the entire network. But anything that starts to give more real examples and really starts to show how this network can work and function, and make sure that the Pagoda team feels ready to actually put this live. Because when this goes live, it's going to be news. When we have a sharded network on mainnet, that is a newsworthy thing in the crypto space. And there's going to be a lot of eyes on that of how that goes. And if we are not successful or you're cutting corners just because of the competition, that could go sideways quickly. Again, I hope I'm there, but I understand that we got to do what's best.
Dude, we're a corrupt team. We'll get you in. I love that you say it, and I think you're very eloquent about it. I may have tried to express something similar, maybe not as eloquently. I agree with you. I feel like I'm not a participant at the moment, but I have the same expectations that you hold of the organizers. Even though I am one, I also hold, I guess, my peers, and especially Pagoda, to those standards. If you're a participant and you know that you're performing very poorly, I would be impressed if I set a pool 37 epochs ago. I forgot about it. I hear that my pool is destabilizing the entire networks, and I realize that these people are not able to figure it out. It was easy enough for me to set it up and forget. How are you guys pretending to run a mainnet if my zombie pool is holding you back? So I feel like that's the really hard balance to strike. Like, some edge cases are really easy to identify. There's a lot in the middle that we're still working with. And we definitely take on the message that there is validator performance and organization and our performance as the executing team. So we do take on responsibility for that. But solid message, sir. Blaze, when can we expect the Shardnet near delegation and the blacklisting process to kick in? And I am aware that there is a conversation happening as we speak. So whatever you can share with us so far.
We have a call actually 3 times a week. Each part of that call just to sync up how the program's going. What do we need to modify? What do we need to adjust? And as the new challenges come out, reviewing those. So we're going to talk about this issue again tomorrow. We've been talking about it at length on Telegram, trying to get the community feedback in. We launched a forum to say, what challenges are you experiencing? So we're going to digest that, talk about that tomorrow, come up with a revamp plan and communicate that out with them tomorrow. So we may not see some of this delegation things taking place till early next week or over the weekend. Not quite sure yet because we need to modify some of the scripts that we're going to do with auto delegation based on what that final decision is. So we'll need a little time to do that. But I would think that overall you'll have communication tomorrow on what our plan is moving forward. And then at present, depending on what the team and the quorum decides, we've got 1 week left on Shardnet, a little bit over a week right now. So then the next decision is, are we ready to make Testnet? And then when we go to Testnet, do we bring everyone who stays, who's not able to make that jump? So those are the things that are coming up. So in terms of uptime, keeping on top of that validator, now's the time. We're getting ready to get down to that process where there will be, not everyone's going to make it to Testnet because it's going to be delegated near. It will be a selective process. So we still got to define all that criteria, but it will be forthcoming sooner than later.
You've been warned, people. If you are a zombie, unzombie yourself as soon as possible and help us keep the network stable. Even if you don't make the cut, I think that's an interesting take to have. If you realize that you're most likely not going to be in the top 200, please keep running your validator. Like, it's still good and exciting to be part of the network. It's not just about winning. And definitely keep an eye on the announcements channel. It's happening on a as needed basis, and there's a sense of urgency when we push out these announcements on a Friday. It would not be going out on a Friday if it weren't absolutely necessary. So you get to spend the weekend with us on the Discord.
No, I'm excited to see.
Any closing thoughts, Joe?
I'm ready for the challenge, and I appreciate the hard work that's going into this. I know this is not an easy problem to solve, and just excited to see what's next.
Brilliant. With that, I think that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in Feel free to share these with as many validators as you can. I feel that sometimes a bit of the context really helps to see where some of the decisions are coming. And if you have any feedback or anything that you think may help the competition or the performance of the network or both, definitely reach out to us. We are on the Discord. Pagoda actually onboarded a new product manager just a week ago to really help manage all the flow of feedback and liaise with the team conducting the tests. So we should see a lot more support on that side as well.
Thanks, guys.
Brilliant. I'll see you soon.